That vote sport and recreation stand part of the schedule. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question now is that vote Crown Research Institutes stand part of the schedule. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. Contrary will say no. The ayes have it. The question now is that vote defence stand part of the schedule. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. Contrary will say no. The ayes have it. The question now is that vote defence force stand part of the schedule. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. Contrary will say no. The ayes have it. The question now is that vote research, science and technology stand part of the schedule. Call David Shearer.
Thank you, Mr Chair. There's one thing that both this party and the National Party agree on, and that's that science, research and technology is a key driver of our economy. And I guess it was with some excitement, I suppose, not excitement, perhaps I didn't get too excited about the budget, but certainly with some anticipation when I heard that there was going to be a special announcement on science, research and technology in this budget, announced before the main budget, a week before the main budget. I thought, well, this was going to be the announcement of a key driver for the economy to get behind and be that plan, that strategy for the future. Well, what an insipid ad hoc sort of an arrangement we saw, Mr Chair. And I want to speak on two of these things. The first is that there was an increase in the budget. And I acknowledge that there was an increase in the budget this year. $56 million in this budget. And what was it going to do? Well, it was going to be spent on grants and vouchers administered by the government and given to companies. This was this government's answer to increasing and driving private sector R&D. We have one of the worst R&D spends in the OECD, one of the worst OECD spends in R&D in the private sector. And what do? We give money to the government to sit there and ask for applications by companies to be given money. The R&D tax credit, 15% tax credit, actually meant a change in culture in the R&D sector, in the private sector. I've been around to a lot of the companies in and around New Zealand in the last few weeks. The same question I asked them, what do you think about the grants scheme in the last budget? The answer is always the same. For the big companies, actually not quite the same. For the big companies, they say, well, we'll get $2 or $3 million. That's fine by us. It means that we'll be able to, we'll push some of the stuff, the R&D stuff into that we were already going to do and do R&D, and we'll buy some of the things that we weren't necessarily going to spend our money on. But the small companies, they say, well, actually, it doesn't affect us because we won't probably get anything out of this new $56 million. We won't get anything. And they all say, unanimously, small and large companies, they all say, we would have preferred to have the 15% tax credit because it means that we would have taken that extra little bit of risk backed up by the government. An extra bit of risk and the knowledge that 15% was going to be met by the government. That's what the Australian government has done, Mr Chair. Mr Chair, the Australian government has just bumped up its R&D tax credit to 15% at the same time as we've eliminated ours. We have pushed up our increase in R&D by about 5 or 6%, which is just about enough to keep pace with inflation. What's Australia done? It's increased it by 25%. So they've got a 15% tax credit. They've got a 25% increase in R&D spending, and we sit in this house, Mr. Chair, and we hear about this government's plan to catch up with Australia. How can you possibly catch up in Australia when one of your key drivers, which is R&D, science and technology, has just fell yet further behind where the Australians are? What a ridiculous, insipid, de facto, planless, if there's such a word, planless government we have before us. The second thing is, instead of actually having a real plan and a real strategy, what we have in this is the merging of two departments, Morse and Force, are going to be merged together. This is shuffling the chairs on the Titanic, Mr. Chair. It is nothing more than that. We are going to spend $6 million. $6 million is going to be spent on this exercise. It won't even return benefit in the first 5 years. In the first 5 years. There is no plan, Mr. Chair. There is no strategy. And if there was something that I can applaud the government on, it's the new name that they've called this merged entity, which is Science and Innovation. And to some degree, I agree with that. But you would have thought that they would have put somebody in the place. They would have gone through a really good search for the best person, the best brains in the world to come and head it. And this government, Mr. Chair, did not do that.